Hey everybody, it's the Pothead Professor here, back with another history lesson for you. Today we're going to be taking a look at the history of cannabis in the Middle East. The Middle East as a region certainly has a storied history, both of its peoples, cultures, as well as the use of cannabis. Dating all the way back to Mesopotamia, the Greek historian Herodotus reported seeing Scythian citizens inhaling hemp seed vapors for use in rituals as well as for personal recreation. Our story of cannabis, however, picks up in the 9th century, where the Islamic Empire of the Abbasid Caliphate is expanding its territory in every direction, including east towards Persia. Throughout this time, the most common way of ingesting cannabis was by eating hashish, a sticky substance made by compressing the resins of the plant. And the Indians and Persians living along this eastern edge of the empire had already been using hashish for its psychoactive properties for centuries. First being adopted by certain Islamic sects in this eastern region, hashish quickly grew in popularity across the empire, at least partially due to the fact that the Quran did not explicitly ban the use of cannabis, but did ban the use of alcohol, like wine and mead. The western spread of cannabis was helped along by another factor in the 11th century when the Seljuk people from Turkey took Baghdad and wrested power from the Abbasids. These new rulers were quick to accept the psychoactive herb, and there have been frequent mentions found in literature and poetry that date back to Seljuk rule. There is also the legendary story of Hassan-i-Saban and his order of Hashishans. Marco Polo, the Venetian explorer, told of how Hassan would ensnare young men and feed them a secret potion in the splendid gardens of his fortress, which were of course always populated with beautiful young women for the men's pleasure as well. In this garden of earthly delights, Hassan would keep the young men under a trance and train them to be assassins, sending them on dangerous missions to eliminate political opponents. As the name would suggest, this secret potion given to Hassan's Hashishans was hashish, forever linking the misguided belief that hashish would induce violent tendencies. Now, while many of the details are disputed, Hassan did in fact have a fanatical following of skilled warriors and assassins, and spread his influence westward from the eastern edge of the empire, bringing the use of hashish along with him. Another Islamic sect that would be integral in the spread of hashish are the Sufis, who would use it in their religious observances and would eventually spread the drug to Syria and Egypt. At the time, many Sufis were recruited among the poor, who could not afford wine, which, despite the Quranic ban, was still abundantly used by the upper class of the society. These Sufis claimed, like many Indian holy men before them, that this gentle herb expanded consciousness, brought insight, peace, repose, and a closeness to God. Another factor that would help push cannabis use further and further west was the 12th and 13th century invasion by the Mongol horde. While steppe tribes descending out of Central Asia is certainly nothing new for this region, this particular invasion pushed many refugees out of the eastern edge of the empire towards places like Syria and Egypt, and even as far as Morocco and Spain. On top of this, the Mongols coming out of Central Asia were already very familiar with the cannabis plant, so both the invading horde and fleeing refugees would bring cannabis west with them. Then, in the middle 13th century, the Ayyubid dynasty controlling Egypt was overthrown by the Mamluks, who brought about a lengthy period of cultural, economic, and social decadence, which coincided with widespread use of hashish among the people. This was eventually followed by the ruthless Ottoman Empire taking control of the region, and these two empires back to back grew a great divide between the wealthy upper class and the poor agrarian laborers. However, hashish consumption was common to oppressor and oppressed alike. The rulers would use it to enhance their pleasures, and the peasants to escape the dreariness of their daily lives. As hashish usage spread across every level of society, there were of course its detractors. The curtailment of the drug's use would come in waves, with many rulers hoping more to protect the control they had over their state than through any moral imperative to save its people. Yet, despite the absolute political and religious power these leaders held, they were never able to fully suppress the use of cannabis. The first of these waves was instituted by the governor of Cairo during the last days of the Ayyubid dynasty. He called for a culling of all the cannabis plants growing in what was basically the Central Park of Cairo. The authorities raided the park and burned all the cannabis plants in a huge bonfire. However, this simply moved the farming of cannabis to the outskirts of the city. Later, Al-Zahir Babar of the Mamluk Empire would invoke a full ban on the plant, along with banning wine. He had led military campaigns against the invading Mongol hordes and had seen firsthand what rampant alcohol and cannabis abuse could do to a regiment of trained warriors. However, Babar's successor, Al-Mansur Galawan, reversed this repressive policy, trying a more liberal approach instead and taxing the drugs. This once again led to a boom in consumption. And while Spain was under Islamic control, hashish was consumed openly. However, its use faded once Spain was retaken by the Holy Roman Empire. Throughout all these fluctuations in popularity across the Islamic world, many Muslim physicians were finding medical uses for the plant as well. The physician Al-Razi refers to using hemp leaves as a curative power for cases of epilepsy. And Rumphius, a German botanist, describes in his herbarium the Muslim usage of cannabis to treat asthma, gonorrhea, constipation, and as an antidote for poisoning. Other Arab physicians reported that hashish was used to stimulate appetite and described it as a beautiful music to the sense of hearing. And we can see these ancient models paralleled in our modern-day usage of cannabis as medicine. As we look towards the modern-day Middle East, as with the rest of the world, the plant is now demonized. Much debate has surfaced between Islamic sects about the specific Quranic passage banning the use of khamr. Originally thought of as specifically referring to wine and other fermented alcoholic beverages, it has since been argued as referring to any intoxicant, including cannabis. However, we are starting to see the tides turn once again. In 2020, Lebanon became the first Middle Eastern country to legalize the use of cannabis for industrial and medicinal use, and we're seeing arguments pushing for cannabis being used medicinally over similar drugs used for the same purpose, mainly opioids. But we'll have to see where the next century takes us. Hopefully, with modern scientific practices, we'll be able to do more research into just how cannabis affects our bodies, how we can leverage its medicinal values, and what possible negatives there are to long-term usage. But if you think I missed anything, glossed over something, or was just flat out wrong, please put that down in the comments and keep this discussion going. I'm certainly always happy to learn a little bit more about this amazing plant. But until next time, take it easy, everybody.